It's 6 o'clock, I call this budget work session to order. Scott, you're on the spotlight.
Can you want to shut down a little late? Do you remember?
Oh, no, I don't. I'm gonna do a guess. We're gonna have a little strobe light here for a minute while Brenda figures out the lights.
No, let's hope everything works as it did this afternoon. So the council received your, oh, cool.
Oh, that's so nice.
Now, nobody fall asleep over here in the dark. So you got your 2023 budget. I'm gonna kind of hit the highlights, but as we go through each fund, I don't think we're gonna go through each section in each fund, you know, like administration, cemetery, city hall. If there's anything any of the council members want to bring up to discuss, definitely throw out a shout out. So in summary on the 2023 budget, you're looking at spending $13.5 million for the next 12 months, starting July 1st. Couple of items to hit on. Cost of living increases. We have always adopted the Detroit CPI, except the last 2 years. Because this year it's at 6.2%. And basically what that is that keeps all the employees even with inflation. It doesn't increase our pay beyond inflation. It just means we can still buy that gallon of milk, which was over $5, that gallon of gas, which is $3. So go figure that there's such a discrepancy in those two. The loaf of bread, all of the basic staples is what creates the CPI for different areas. We've always adopted the Detroit, as I mentioned. I surveyed managers listserv, other communities, where are you at? I think the lowest was 2.5 and the highest was 6 something plus a 2% one-time bonus. So that's 8% in 1 year for that community's employees. So what we did last year is we took half of the CPI, and I think it was 7 last year. So we took 3.5. We're not going to make the argument. I think the 3.5, I think maybe people sitting around the table that get a paycheck every 2 weeks don't necessarily agree, but I think the 3.1 is an adequate increase in wages for 1 year. The non-union employees who ratified a 5-year contract 2 years ago, it's locked in at 2.5. Now you might argue non-union is getting more than the union, but that has rarely been the case. In the 20 years I've been here, I think maybe 4 times, non-union have actually gotten a higher increase than the union. And the union, you know, they negotiate it. They're satisfied with that 2.5%. Just a reminder, this was what we had last year, although we massaged it a little bit. The American Rescue Plan Act. You know, a lot of people are saying, what is the city doing with all their money? Well, we're not getting $40 million like the county, or $30 million like the city of Muskegon, or I think Norton Shores is $25 million. We got just under $300,000. We've already dedicated $50,000 to the Playhouse last year, based upon the premise that of all departments in the city, COVID and the shutdown, complete shutdown of entertainment venues, hit the Playhouse hardest than any other functioning part of the city. People were still drawing water, still paying their water bills, still paying their sewer bills, we're still collecting taxes. The Playhouse had no revenue. This year we had looked at the $246,000 towards a new lift station on Lake Street. We're going to actually, and I'll get to that a little bit later, we're actually going to put that out maybe a year. I know Brian's probably going to be nervous for another year or two, but you know, availability of finances pretty much dictate everything. So what we're doing, we need to spend that money, and I don't know if we've got till the end of this year, or we got 1 more year, Alyssa, on the ARPA money. Sorry, put you on the spot and you had a mouthful of food, so we'll just move on. What we thought is, since we can probably delay and get additional or different pots for that sewer lift station, that we would put it towards street resurfacing. And I don't think Brian has really targeted what streets right now, but it's going to be a lot of, is it mill and fill?
Yeah, rehabilitation.
So we're going to scrape off the bad and put on the new. So that's a big summary of the entire budget. 2 years ago, the city council, a year and a half ago, established a number of goals, and that kind of guides staff as to where we need to spend our money and where we need to spend our time and money. And yell at me if I keep blocking the 3 of you.
No, you're fine.
Yes, Alyssa?
Obligated by end of '24 and expended by '26.
Okay. So we'll probably have it spent, I don't know if we're still gonna get it yet this summer, but at least by next summer, we'll be able to do that, right, Brian?
Yep.
You know, Brian's one of the rare employees I've ever come across, is when I give him more money, he has trouble spending it, where everybody else is asking for more money and spends it the moment they get it. What we have done is council asked about increasing sidewalk funding. 2 years ago, we spent $3,000. The current fiscal year and next fiscal year, we'll spend $179,000. So that's 60 time fold over sidewalk improvements. That includes Mears Avenue, which will be a project that we do later this summer. And we actually had to push out, just because of timing and getting bids, the funding from this year went into next year, and I think that was $35,000. So there's actually $70,000 major street, local street funding, and I think some general fund funding, as well as the portion on Mears Avenue that'll be replaced. We've added a maintenance worker to the DPW staff. It's been over a year now, or just shy of a year? So you guys didn't know I was gonna quiz you, just shy of a year. We're live streaming the city council meetings, and there will be more discussion about that later. Increased street funding. 2 years ago, we spent $316,000. Current fiscal year, next fiscal year, we're looking at $3.5 million. So we've addressed 4 of the 5. The 5th, Caroline Glamsey is now finishing up on the climate emergency plan. Conversation I had with her, and I think I passed on to council, is that it's going to look more like Montague's, which is a smaller, more manageable for a community our size, versus Ann Arbor, where they've got a staff, 3 or 4 people, that's all they're going to be focused on. So we're kind of, balancing what we can actually do and have some accomplishments as far as reducing our carbon footprint. Some of the other minor goals, I call them minor because they got less than a majority council vote. We have, not necessarily we, there's been more events at the North Mears Promenade. We brought back some winter type activities. We've got Feet on the Street. I got to get that correct between that and Walk the Beat. The library's got the rechargeable picnic table up there, so there's been a lot more activity. Obviously, with the social district, we've had a lot of activity down there with that. We are working on connecting the downtown to the waterfront and developing a pocket park that'll be between Catchmark and Bowes, and that's part of the TIFA Phase 5 project that we might yet get going this fall. Bids have not been let yet. We have not done anything in regards to a skate park or a disc golf course. Primarily, the reason with that is with council support for some grant funding, we're looking at improving and taking care of what we have versus adding. The disc golf course at Funnel Field, you can play with the numbers all you want and try and get it to fit, but a 9-hole disc golf course would be difficult to fit in at Funnel Field, because the open areas in the spring and the fall, you'll have 2 to 3 soccer teams out there practicing. So it would be kind of a hard mix with what we have going on and a future disc golf course. Not that it can't be done, it would just be slightly difficult. Other minor goals that received 2 votes, we have completed increased playhouse staffing, and I'm going with where we were 2 years ago versus where we were a year ago. Cindy Beth has pretty much become a fixture. Cindy Beth Davis Dykema Smith Jr. has become a fixture. Beth and Cindy Beth have been able to receive funding from outside sources to help support that position. It's a part-time, 25 hour a week position. And I know that's taken a huge burden off Beth. In progress, we're improving ordinance enforcement. And I know that's often a topic of discussion, but we are looking at a couple of new ordinances for additional enforcement. It was in your packet and probably have my opinion, and I guess we'll see how that goes tomorrow. Providing more public restrooms. We are looking at a Portland loo in the Pocket Park between Catchmark and Bowes again. And the schools are actually considering using one of those as well.
What was that last time?
Is Beth asking what a Portland Loo is?
I'm sorry. Yes, I didn't know what that
Yeah,
was.
Look them up online, right?
I'm gonna.
Yep.
For the good of the.
Yeah, basically, it's primarily a stainless steel, real fancy outhouse. I mean, it's permanent, there's a lot of things that you can add to it. It's great for maintenance, because you just go in there and you just hose it down, you have a drain, and it's dropped in place. You hook up the pipes, and you go from there. So,
They're all over Europe.
they are, and Grand Rapids has started putting them in with a lot of success, so we're
nice.
thinking about giving it a try. You know, if we were to build a standalone, I think you've probably seen the numbers for the concessions and bathrooms at Funnel Field. You're looking at $100,000, and I think the loo is 25 to 30. And again, it's drop in place. There's not a lot of infrastructure, so if it doesn't work, whether it's vandalism or usage or wear and tear, then we're not invested in a $100,000 building that is going to be hard to
We might
remove.
want to consider if it works for Funnel Field instead of the building or not. I know
We might, but additionally at Funnel Field, we're looking at
I
storage
know we gotta have
for
storage
the ball
and
fields. We're
concessions,
looking
so,
at,
yeah,
you gotta have a lot of the
multi-use building.
multi-uses.
Yeah.
Concessions is a consideration out there too, as well as, you know, where they're at, you need a little more plumbing type of accommodation. And we do have a janitor's closet out there as well.
My concern with those is we're using the restrooms behind the Arts Council now,
Yes.
year-round. That loo is an unheated, I don't know,
I think they can be heated. I
Okay.
do believe that they can be heated, and I think the issue we've got with the bathrooms behind the Arts Council is they're starting to show a lot of age. I think we're doing a lot of repairs down there. I think the Arts Council probably has expansion plans that would not include keeping those open for the public, so to speak. So we're looking at options to that. But yeah, it gets expensive when you start doing brick and mortar. I mean, it's amazing, for $100,000, you can have a couple of stalls and a janitor's closet and halfway to a halfway decent house.
well, I know the ones behind the Arts Council get used quite a bit in the winter, especially with all the activity on the sledding hill and the North Promenade there, so.
Yep.
I'm concerned about having capacity with just the loo.
Well, it's one stall, and I think there's just two behind the Arts Council. And I don't even know if they're still men and, male and female. I mean, most of those, just take those tags off. I've done that a couple of times, just, when there's a bunch of girls standing outside a boys' bathroom, like up at the high school softball fields, I say, just knock on the door and go inside, because there's really no difference. And typically at any type of public event, the female bathrooms get used more than the males. Increasing funding for pedestrian pathway repairs, we did that out at Coble Park. We still probably need to go back in there and do a lot of repaving, but at least we're addressing that to some degree. Improving the cemetery maintenance this year, and it'll pop up a little bit later, maybe not in details on the slides. We're looking to repair a lot of the roads, the parking lot, and put in a new sign for the cemetery. Brian and Brenda have been working on a design. They got an estimate, and they're trying to get a couple of more estimates. It's the typical arch type, a lot of metal work, cemetery looking sign, and it'll say Oakhurst Cemetery. The only other thing we'll have to tackle fairly soon is a new roof out at the cemetery for the Sexton's building.
Are those covered by the due care funds?
Yes.
Those
Perpetual care.
perpetual care?
Yes, yep, that's what we're drawing, and that's kind of we're taking the perpetual care money out of that fund, we're sending it to the general fund, and the expenses will be basically out of the general fund. So, yep, perpetual care. We've got availability of 180,000. I'm just winging it. You can just shake your head yes or no. Alyssa will, pardon?
I believe we're gonna go with 140.
But we've got 180 available.
Correct.
Yes. Yep. The other one, I guess I wasn't quite clear, and I went back through my notes. There was a goal of testing groundwater, lake, and river quality, water quality. We do the groundwater to the degree that that's our source of drinking water with our wells. So that is tested quite regularly. We haven't done anything with the lake or rivers. Not necessarily sure if that's our responsibility or if that's DEQ. Obviously, there's discussions going on over on the other side of the river with Chumars. So we'll see where that goes. We haven't done anything with Destination Whitehall. We haven't done any branding, but we can probably start doing that. Just start putting that on letterhead, buy some t-shirts and kind of start promoting that. Restoring Colville Park. I think the idea was to restore it to its pre-flood levels, but I think staff and hopefully with council support, we've kind of said, all right, Mother Nature has won this one. Brian has something to add.
I do. The district came to me here shortly, not that long ago, and asked if we would be interested in them applying for a grant to help restore that park, so.
Okay.
And I said, I think so, I believe so, absolutely, so.
And obviously, we've gotten, I think, almost all compliments in regards to clearing the vegetation on the waterfront.
And more to come.
And more to come. We are looking at from the old trestle towards 31, looking to
Correct.
clear that.
Perfect.
And we've always done this work in coordination with the Conservation District, because they're the experts to tell you what to cut and what not to. Even though it looks like we cut everything, we still did that with their guidance. Promoting public events on West Cove, we haven't done that because that's not done yet. And extending the cemetery fencing, I think Brian actually brought that up, that we probably should do that. So depending on where those bids come in for the parking lot and the streets, the roads, not really streets, then we'll look at maybe we can add that. I think a couple of sections on either end.
Yep.
The one vote council goals, we have increased the dedication of city staff for snow removal. Improving the ADA compliance on West Colby, we haven't really done that because it's not built, but it will be taken into account. I think some of you on the TIFA board or some of the audience or council members have seen where we've got two sidewalks. One is, the quickest way to the waterfront, and the other is a little bit more northerly that meets ADA compliance. Making better use of the parks, we've got a lot of grants in the works right now, and they just announced last Thursday or Friday that the second round of the, yes, the SMART grants have opened up. The only thing that really nipped us in the bud with that is that we did not have letters of support from disability organizations, so we'll reach out to those in the area and see if they'll take a look at our plans, because everything we're putting in is ADA compliant. There just wasn't, the letter of support. Enforcing sidewalk snow removal, that's just always, every winter we go through, trying to get the compliance with that. We haven't done anything with developing land northeast of Shoreline Elementary. That's all privately owned, and I think right now the property owner really has they just want a big yard, really big yard, acres and acres.
Mhm.
Minimizing Colby Street vacancies, we haven't gotten involved in that. An ice rink at Funnel Field, again, haven't moved on that. A boat launch at Goodrich Park or gathering spaces at Colville Park. Again, focusing more on fixing versus new. In the general fund, you have 4.1 million in revenues and 4 million in expenses, which gives you about $100,000 to the good. But one thing I want to point out, and we'll probably come back with yet another change to the fund balance policy for two reasons. One is because of this. The other is we don't have policies for any of the other funds. It's always been kind of a SOP and a comfort level versus, something written that we can rely on from year to year. But the target in your budget says we should have $1 million. We're at $700,000. It's really not that ugly of a $300,000 gap, because we've got 1.2 million in capital with highway, cemetery, parks, and transfers, which is way beyond a normal year. So if you take those into account, we should be closer to 830,000. So it's a little tighter gap than as the policy's written right now, is 30% of total expenditures. And I think we need to take that into account, because the idea of the fund balance is to cover some additional, I just said that twice, some additional cost, or, if a tornado rolls through the city, we've got cash to handle emergencies. But right now, $700,000 is a very comfortable number. Shifting administrative expenses, we actually looked at taking some out of the general fund and moving that to TIFA, to VLT, not VLT, to LDFA, to Brownfield, and some other areas. I think we put some in the marijuana fund as well. You know, allowable expenses that we can shift and lighten the burden a little bit on the general fund. Early voting cost, maybe we'll just skip over that so that Brenda doesn't have any nightmares tonight. I know that the clerks are meeting weekly on how to coordinate that. We just had not really even a dry run, because the election last week was normal,
Right.
but when we get to, we don't have anything in August.
Presidential primary, that's
Yeah,
when it
the presidential. And what that basically does is 9 days prior to the election, people can come in and vote. So that creates all sorts of logistic nightmares, and I know she's got a lot of nightmares going on, but I'm concerned with what the media is gonna do with that. Are they gonna start predicting a winner on the third day of early voting? Because I know years back, they used to do that before California and, you know, the West Coast even closed their polls. They're predicting winners, and like, because it's a 3-hour time difference, people are saying, well, why should I go vote? They've already predicted this person as the winner. And I don't know if there was a law or not, but there was at least a curbing of that early reporting. So who knows what's gonna happen here in Michigan with that. And I think it was done for all the wrong reasons, but that's my political stance. We're looking at replacing one of the police department administrative vehicles. Roger's gotten an estimate, a couple of estimates, 3 of them. So come July 1st, we'll say, all right, go ahead and sign on the dotted line, and he'll work with Alyssa to get the actual financing, because we've done those as lease purchases.
Question on that one.
Yes.
Last year I brought up the weed store tax money.
Yep.
Is there, and Alyssa would know, is there any way we can set up or a line item where we can take half that money every year, put it away for police equipment and vehicles, and put the other half towards Parks and Rec? Is it?
And DPW.
And DPW.
There's 2 answers. One is the annual registration fee has to go into a fund that is dedicated just towards us managing the marijuana shops,
Okay.
which is part of what we shifted. We put some of Brandon's salary in there for him to go in and inspect.
Yep.
So there you're kind of limited. The 56,000 that we get from the tax revenue,
Yeah.
the state shared revenue, no strings attached. So that is in the general fund. It'll be 112,000. That's in the general fund. We can use that for whatever we want. And I think, council could decide that you're gonna earmark it, or you could just look at that amount every year and decide where it's gonna go. You might want the full amount to go to parks one year, and next year you might decide, let's get 2 new squad cars. So you do have a lot of, I think you got carte blanche as far as where you spend that money. And that's what the last estimate was, is 56,000.
Yeah, 51,841 from 2022, and so that's gonna project with 2 stores now, 100 plus for 23 is what it should be, so.
Well, and those numbers,
Knock on wood.
it's.
And I know it's plateauing, and there's a lot of stores closing, and so that money's it's not always gonna be there. I'm just thinking we've always got Parks and Rec stuff, and Roger always needs cars,
Mhm.
and being that's kind of, marijuana and police are kind of related, that, it would be a good spot to have that, to be able to do that.
Well, and we are doing that with restricted funds that we get,
Yeah.
covering some police salaries. I'm not, if we get audited, we'll have to justify how many times any of the police officers were inspected. But they did tell us, I went on one of the state webinars, and they're saying that the pie's getting bigger because there's more marijuana shops opening still, but that means there's more people eating from that pie. So it's not, early on it went like this, but you're right, it's now starting slight growth, but pretty much a plateau.
Just drive down Apple or Lake and just, wow, that's all I can say there.
Yep. I don't know if there's anything else on general fund?
I guess.
Too bad I hit down.
Yeah. Well, you brought up the Destination Whitehall thing, and I think pretty easy move, at least maybe for this year, that would be a low-cost stuff. I call them the puddle cams down there that Catchmark has down there that still shine on where the puddle was on 31. Check with them and see if maybe they could put one of those up on top of the marina building, shine down White Lake, and one on the splash pad. And have them run like they do now. They're available 24/7, and people can go on that and look down the lake, and we can do that as our destination project this year. Reasonable versus looking at a nut puddle that's no more, it's not there anymore.
And I'm not trying to memorize all of this. I've got
Yeah, she's scribbling.
3 people write it down.
One of the other huge things I think we really need to look at, and I don't know, I guess my question to you before all this, before I start down this, is how do we determine the pass-through from Tifa and LDFA to the, is that something, I don't think it's statutory, it's more, this is what we're,
Well, sort of.
okay.
Statutorily, we have to return any unused funds
Okay.
on a proportionate basis. And, yeah, we could spend, because I think it's 500,000 in Tifa and 200 in LDFA, we can spend 700,000. It'll take Brian a little longer than most people, because as I mentioned, he's a little slower at spending a lot of money. The drawback there is that if Tifa spends more of that money, that's less money going into the general fund. Because we pass through to ourselves, both from Tifa and LDFA, and I think we're close to 50% of that. Pardon?
We're a pretty large number.
Yeah, so if you're looking at 700,000, holding back on that, that's probably about $300,000 that doesn't go to the general fund.
So, yeah, so we're chipping at our own.
Out of one pocket
Our own
into the
heel
other.
for that, yeah. Okay.
Yep. And I don't know why we settled on the 500. It's been between 500 and 400 for Tifa, mostly the 500 number. And LDFA, I think we dropped to 100 for a couple of years when we had some projects moving on. I think that's when we expanded Ullman's Drive to the north. So we kind of held back a little bit. But I do know that the other taxing jurisdictions are very appreciative of that money.
Oh, yeah.
We do get letters of thanks from, I think, fire and library every year.
Yep.
So,
And the other question is, the money from the sale of the Lake Street property, is that being used as a match currently for the grants that we have out there, or is that something we have available, or, you know?
I think that just went into this year's budget as general revenue. We were looking at doing it as some improvements, I think, to G Park, Brian. So it went into the general fund as revenue, but we also spent 19 grand
Yep.
for a new swing set at G Park. And we're also looking at, because the people that sold it to us asked about improving the walkway connection between the two. We did with the ramp one, but there's a set of stairs there that we think are ours, but it's not on city property. But of course, they need repairs, so nobody's claiming them. Except they're pointing to the city, you need to fix your stairs. And we're like, well, they might have been put in 100 years ago, but it's, I don't think it's on city property. It's kind of questionable.
I thought I was under the understanding when that was sold, that we brought that up at council, that money was gonna be able to be used for Parks and Rec, all of it, but,
And we still,
maybe I misunderstood, but,
no, I think that was the intent. And again, it went into the general fund.
yeah.
And this year, we've got $900,000 worth of park grants out there
Yeah.
that'll draw down on that money.
Yeah.
It's not, it's not directly tie-barred, but it boosted up the general fund.
But it was a
and then we're
match,
using
yeah,
general
okay,
fund
all right.
revenue for matches.
I'm thinking that we really need to look at starting to work on our tables, and going to a recycled plastic, type table, which is more green for one, doesn't have to be replaced. I think we need to start by at least replacing the units down there under the pavilion. I kinda did some research and looking, and we can get 11.9, we can get 9 regular table, plus shipping, of course. 9 regular tables and 1 handicap. They're about 250, 300 pounds a piece. So people aren't gonna be pulling them out and dragging them all over. They can pretty much be permanent tables and stay down there. There's a few colors with those you can do. But I think, and then we can start, the ones that are in rough shape, we can get rid of, and The other ones we can move to other parts of the park.
It's on probably the last slide, it's about $2,000 per park bench
Yeah,
for the true recycled.
yeah.
And
Yeah, these are about, what are they, about 1,800 apiece, 1,900
For the
apiece
picnic
when I
tables?
looked at
Yep.
'em, but again, we don't have to bring them in the winter. Poly furniture is where it's at. I mean,
Mhm.
they're scratch, you scratch them, they got color all the way through and everything else, so.
Yep.
And like I said, again, if we can find funds either through TIFA or marijuana sales tax funds or whatever, however we could do it, that was one of the things I had, was pushing for. I think we need to do that. The other, as Brian is well aware, the light poles. There's 7 light poles that are in the actual parking lot of the marina in Goodrich Park, the square-headed ones. There's
Mhm.
7
Now
of them.
6.
6, now there's 6, yeah. There's 7 spots and 6 left. Yeah, after the last fiasco.
Are we going through your list? Is that what we're doing?
No, I'm just kinda going through it as the general fund, just thinking.
Did you give it to everybody?
No,
Okay.
don't choke.
we did include those in the grant.
Yeah,
Um,
if we don't get grants, do we have can we start working on a light replacement policy or replacement schedule or something, because we got a lot of lights that need help.
I think primarily in the marina, I think those are probably original with the marina back in
it's square-headed
89,
ones.
90.
Yeah,
Maybe one.
So what we'll do, if we're not
Move forward,
successful
Greg.
with the grants, we'll take a look at the local match
okay,
and come back to council with a plan to say, hey, we budgeted 25 grand as our local match, we didn't get the grant, where do we want to spend that 25
Okay.
grand? I know maybe we should leave it there for historical purposes, but there's an old Sesame Street 5 globe by Napa, which the mayor brought up.
yeah,
We don't have parts and we can't find parts.
Mhm.
The company that originally put in those sold out to another company, and they basically did nothing to support the maintenance on those
yeah.
5 globes. And I think at one point, we went on a shopping spree and bought up a lot of what they had in their inventory. So that one is probably not repairable, but it's another one that we would replace if we
Yep.
get either the grant funding or come back with
Yep.
our share of the local match.
Yeah, we pretty much from where phase 3 or phase 4 stopped up there, we got a lot of lights that we fix and repair. And we go LED with them, and again, that
Yep.
would be, you
Yep.
know, the green carbon footprint stuff, and so.
Yep.
That was just a thought with that one, so.
Because the ones that are on Lake Street are consumer power lights.
That's what you were saying, because what would it take us to get them to, will they go with something like, will they match like what we have, or it's just what they have is what we get?
I think what they did is tried to match I don't know what they matched at that point. Probably the Montague lights coming across the causeway
Yeah.
is mostly what they matched. But I think what we'll do in the Goodrich Park is go with a match for the downtown.
Like the same thing downtown. yeah,
Because it makes
very
life a
well.
lot easier for Brian's crew
Absolutely.
if they're dealing with one set of lights
Yep.
versus 5 different kinds.
Yep. All right, well, that's for, as good as that gets, I guess, and like I said, I'd like to see those tables at least for a start.
Yep. And that, with the park improvements, I think we've got one of those in Spencer Park, you know, and it's got the handicap spot, so the top of the table is longer
Yep.
and there's benches so that.
Yep,
wheelchair
one's a
can
3
fit
spot
under.
and the other one's the ones I quoted out were, one's a 3 spot and the other ones are 4 to 6, I think people can sit at them, so.
Yep.
All right.
Major projects that we've got coming up. Cemetery, we mentioned roads, parking, and a sign, about $158,000. Streets, we're looking at $1.5 million for Mears Avenue, and then the $246 grand from the ARPA that'll go to street resurfacing. Just under $1 million for park improvements, and the downtown Phase 5, I guess we're calling it. I don't know if we did a 4, but we're just gonna go to Phase 5. $1 million, that's for a pocket park between Catchmark and Bell's. 3 parking lots, there'll be a brand new one in Goodrich Park, kind of identical to the one in the annex or to your right as you come in. We're gonna redo the Spring Street parking lot as well as the parking lot behind, behind Northland Insurance and Hokey Pokey, because that's garbage. Our attempts to try and obtain the 2 other private parking lots on First Street fell flat on their face. There wasn't really much of a discussion other than a no, we're not doing it. you know, I tried to argue with them that, you know, we'll pay for it, your tenants can use it, we can always dedicate 2 spots for the apartments. One property owner said absolutely not, I mean, very nicely. The other said that, no, he wants to have the ability to tow vehicles when his renters call to complain. And it's not that, it's about another 30 feet walk for his customers if we had done that. So all told, we're at about $3.7 million in major projects for next year, which is a pretty big chunk of money for a community our size.
Scott,
Yes, sir.
we had spoke last year about the 2 memorials downtown that need, the veteran memorials that need repair, the World War II and the one at Coble Park. I couldn't find anything, and you figured we could put it into, when we talked last year, you said we could probably get it in the budget for this year. I couldn't find anything in a line item, but is that in the works? I mean, is it mixed in with some other
No,
funding?
it was an oops. I think Brian was working with contractors.
Yeah, Dick and I both were.
And I think at one point, somebody gave us just some outrageous number because they didn't want to be bothered with it. So what we will do is when we give you the final budget, we'll put those numbers back in. Was it like 18 grand
No.
for the
Dick, what
2?
was that?
Thought it was pretty high.
18, I think, for both.
Yeah,
9 apiece.
so
Which,
we'll look
yeah.
at putting that back in. Because you're right, those are in need of a lot of, I guess it's tuck pointing, even though it's not.
Well, I know
big
the
building.
World War II, you had said we might be able to work that in with Tifa, because it's in their
Yep.
district, when we redo the connection next to Big John's.
Yep.
So, but they do need to be addressed, I don't wanna see them fall apart.
Nope.
Well, I'm sure it's in everybody's notes right now. Going to streets, this is, and what I did is I kind of grouped, in years past, we would have a slide up here for like the vehicle inspection, where we're gonna take in 1,000, spend 400. I kind of thought, maybe we'll start grouping things a little bit better. So this is your local and major streets. 400,000 in revenues and 630 in expenses in the major street, but that'll still leave us with almost $450,000 in a fund balance. Most of that will go towards Warner Street in 2025. That's what we're looking at right now. We're targeting, there was talk about doing it in 2024. I don't think we're gonna be able to afford it in 2024. Plus there's $400,000 coming from the state, which is in state fiscal year 24. State fiscal year starts October 1st. So obviously that money won't be available to us until 2025. But that'll be just a big chunk of that street project. Brian?
Scott, I had Jeff talking to me as you were speaking. I do apologize.
What-
What was the number you gave on, for the state side of Warner? Yes, you gave a number.
Is that 400?
Yeah, it's over 400. I just wanted to make sure that was.
Local streets, 153 in revenues, 242 in expenses, so we're drawing down on the fund balance, but we'll still be left with 85,000 on a target of 67. So that fund will still be good. And as long as we keep having lighter than normal winters, and this winter was really strange. It was really hard on the roads because we would get a freeze thaw, and every time the snow would melt into the cracks and it would freeze. And you know what? It's amazing how much power water has when it freezes over concrete and asphalt. But we've had a lot of light winters, so we've been able to build up the fund balance in those 2 funds. The inspections again here, I kind of mentioned the salvage vehicle inspections. We started that current fiscal year, where we have an officer, if a car is totaled, it can be untotaled through an inspection, and you have to have a trained and qualified person that does that, and we have a part-time officer who does that. So he'll do the inspection, he'll do the certification, and we actually have to pay him, but obviously our expenses for that service are well covered by the fees. I don't know if you remember years back, there was a nearby community where the police chief was putting that money in his pocket. And he's no longer a police chief in that small community, but The building and rental inspections, we've got 165 in revenues, 166 in expenses. We have a pretty huge fund balance, and we're gonna take a look at maybe some of the vehicles. If we can relate it to inspections, then maybe we can draw down, I don't know if, Brian's next vehicle, if we can expense it out of here, because he oversees the inspection programs down at DPW. So we might be able, he's not getting a $129,000 vehicle, but
Are we gonna have any more inspection fees with the new things we're looking at passing? Building
well,
maintenance,
if we do
hotels?
the hotel and motel, I don't think we're gonna have a lot of inspection fees. We're gonna have a registration fee from 3 hotels, and it's not gonna pad that a whole lot.
Yeah, I was just,
The vacant building, there's a registration fee, and I think that's, I guess you can determine where you're gonna go with that. It can be nominal, 30, 40 bucks, or it can be a couple of thousand as an encouragement not to have a vacant building. But I think the whole point of that really isn't revenue generating. It's primarily to make sure vacant buildings are safe and secure, and, some level of incentive to get somebody in there. But I'm sure, no landlord wants an empty, non-rent paying building. Well, some do. Well, not many. And then the 3 authorities, the brownfield, 723 in revenues, 690 in expenses. 650,000 of that is gonna go to the due care reimbursements. I think I've explained this before, but by our development agreement, Eastbrook Homes is allowed to recoup a lot of their expenses. This kind of got bumped up because in the middle section, they actually had to do the pilings. They were hoping to avoid that, but they had to do pilings to keep the buildings in place. So that kind of bumped up a little bit, but they don't get their money unless the revenue's generated. And we always take our administrative costs first. There is no debt, that's actually the second priority. Then reimbursements, and at some point, when that's paid off, we can actually continue to capture the revenue until we have a couple of $100,000 in the bank for a future brownfield redevelopment. And right now, it's $83,000 in our fund balance, which is adequate for the brownfield. Tifa, $1.4 million in revenues and $2.2 million in expenses. The big expenses for Tifa this year is $60,000. That's the ADA fishing dock that's kind of in Goodrich Park. We're still waiting for the Eagle permits on that. I probably have mentioned this before. Eagle usually is a lot quicker than the Army Corps, but this time we're waiting. Eagle has sent out a notice that they're fully staffed now after COVID and some retirements. I don't know if that's good news or if that's bad news. For permitting, it should be good news, but we haven't seen that pop through yet.
are we to the point where we need to push with some of our senators and reps, or not?
We'll probably touch base on that, because we need to get that done
make a
next
phone
fiscal
call.
year. So it's a July 1st, so come, middle of next month, if we don't have those permits, then we're gonna start having to do the push. $104,000 in Goodrich Park, that's part of one of the grants that we're looking at doing. We've also got $131,000 in the Marina West Pier, it's not structurally a hazard anymore, probably a little bit of a trip hazard, but definitely an eyesore, so we'll bring that up and level it. We've also got $500,000 in the pass-through, $1.1 million on Phase 5, which I think I touched on that before, well, maybe I didn't. It's the West Kobe Promenade, the 3 parking lots, the Pocket Park, I was gonna say Pocket Park again, get that backwards, so I had to really struggle. And that will leave Tifa, and, numbers, when Alyssa brought me this number, I'm like, really? 666? If that has any significance for anybody, but we'll have a fund balance of $666,000 in Tifa, and that's still with that $500,000 pass-through, so we just keep, kind of storing up a little cash so that when we get to those big projects, we're not borrowing. Borrowing isn't bad, but it usually will add 50 to 100% of the cost of the project. So my theory is if you can pay cash for it, why borrow, make the banks richer. The LDFA, $374 in revenues, $238 in expenses. That'll leave us with over $200,000 in a fund balance. what we're looking at, and I'm still waiting for a definitive answer from the attorney as to can LDFA and Tifa be extended, and if so, how? But I think we're pretty solid that LDFA will expire, and I know we're still playing with the deadline. But what we're gonna do is we're storing up all our cash, so before LDF expires, we'll go back through, and I think the road base is still pretty good, but we'll go through and we'll repave all of the streets in that district, which would basically be Cogswell, Delaney, and Almonds Way. I don't even know if we have to do Almonds Way. That's probably only
Almonds Way now.
10, 15 years old. There's been no traffic up there, but we'll have money to do one last project.
Is the industrial park included in that or no?
I think it is.
Probably from Warner all the way
Did
over
we-
Wayland Drive.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Did, they ever buy that large chunk of property from the city?
I like,
Highlight, thank you.
They actually own them.
Okay.
Yep. Yep, that was started hot and heavy just before COVID, and things kind of got set aside for a couple of years, and they actually have acquired it. And we're still waiting for the legal documents back from our attorney for the Benston Road strip. All 5 property owners have agreed to purchase it.
I still like the houses there.
The enterprise fund, starting with the playhouse. I thought you'd do a cutout or something.
Da-da-da-da.
346,000 in revenues, 339 in expenses, so operational wise, cash in, cash out, we're looking at a $7,000 net profit. But there is $80,000 in depreciation. It's not funded depreciation, but it is depreciation that has to be expensed to the account. So it actually, bottom line, comes out negative. But I know Beth is excited about her summer season, as she always is, and hopefully we'll have, as Tom Harriman would always say, butts in the seats.
Butts in the seats,
Because
it's all about
that's
that.
what helps pay. The sewer fund, we're looking at 1.7 million in revenues, 1.3 million in expenses. Our biggest expense has always been treatment. When we ship our sewage out to Apple Avenue, that is a very big expense. And just as a side note, everything seems to be in place to extend the county sewer system to Coopersville. You've got Fairlife, Dundalk Dairy, Swanson Pickle that are all ready to hook up. Engineering's not done on that, but the $60 million in state funding has been secured. It's gonna be in 3 $20 million payments. The state's gonna front $20 million, and as the project actually starts getting fully constructed, the county can draw down on another 20 and another 20. Part of the deal is that Fairlife, which is Coca-Cola, has to kick in $5 million, which is nice, but it's Coca-Cola, $5 million. Hit it, well, a drop in the bucket. But but that project is, I think all the permitting is getting in place, and it's just final engineering and bidding. But that's probably close to a 2-year construction project.
I see they're working on another force main issue in North Muskegon too. Is that the same system?
That is the same system there. The county has applied for some of the state revolving loan funds, which we made a bid at. But since we're not overburdened or significantly overburdened, you know, we're gonna be way down. I think they've already said there's $1 billion in funding and $3 billion in requests. So what are the odds for our efforts we're gonna get funded?
So when we get that extension out towards Coopersville, what impact could that have for us? Any rate relief coming out of that, or?
It's probably gonna stabilize it quite a bit for a number of years. I don't think we're gonna see a reduction in our rates. A lot what, you know, I kind of profess is that, you know, when you lower your rates, everybody loves you for a year, but then when you increase them, they're not happy with you at all. So if you can level them out, you know, and kind of, you know, between revenues and expenses, you've got that, that leveling. That's probably the best way to run a utility. The gallonage really won't have an issue because the plant has got a $41 million hydraulic capacity, and right now we're running between 10 and 12 million gallons per day. The flows, I don't think they're gonna top 6 million from Coopersville. And we're looking at getting the entire city, Fairlife, I mentioned there's another dairy in there too, as well as Swanson Pickle. We'll be going right by Ravenna. Their system, wastewater treatment system, has just been re-permitted, but I think that's a 10-year cycle. So at some point, they might look at, hey, let's just run a pipe and be done with operating our own system and all the permits and all the staffing. So it is quite an exciting project. I think right now, the system at Coopersville, as you drive through it, you can blame it on the wastewater system, the landfill, the cow farm off to the side. They have exceeded their capacity, and they are being fined. The city of Coopersville is being fined, I forget what the number was, Brian, help me out. You don't remember either.
No.
It's thousands of dollars a day.
$7,000
I think it's $7,000 a day by Eagle for exceeding their capacity,
That's a lot of money.
which the city then puts off onto Fairlife. So Fairlife has been hauling their waste to our system, and we're working out a deal where they actually want to pay piped rates versus hauled rates, which is millions of dollars in savings. So we're kind of trying to balance that and actually, I guess, stack the debt so that not everybody can ask for it. If somebody else comes to us and says, well, we got 60 million from the state of Michigan, we're going to put in 5 million, we're going to guarantee you 5 million gallons a day, then our system is going to say, sure, we'll do that. Because it's a lot of good revenue. There's maybe more money in sewage than there is in gold. Yes, it does. Well, and what we do is we come up with, that's over $400,000 net increase, and I know we're asking to raise the sewer rates and the water rates again. That'll give us about a $4.7 million net position, which sounds great, but when you've got $470,000 that we're going to put towards Warner Street in 2025, and $3.3 million for the Lake Street sewer system. I think that was the latest estimate from our engineers. Brand new lift station, and we'll actually put it on our property and get rid of that easement. And the pipes all the way up, and I think that also includes the Warner Street. There's not a lot of sewer work that needs to be done on Warner Street, but we need to replace the lift station on Warner Street. So you add those two together, you're at $4 million or $3.7 million. Suddenly that 4.7 goes, pretty much disappears overnight. So yeah, we're not just sitting on a ton of money just to be, Scrooge McDuck on the pile of cash. In the water fund, probably a similar picture, $994,000 in revenues, $1.1 million in expenses. We'll decrease our net position, but our total net position is $6.1 million. Again, sounds awesome, and you might think, why are we raising the rates? We will put just under $1 million towards Warner Street, because I think every pipe on Warner Street is going to be replaced. And we're looking at $6.2 million in the lead service line replacement. We have, I think the window's shorter now, we started off with 20 years, and we're probably 3 or 4 years into it. With our water asset management plan that we're doing, we're going to have a real good, strong hold on that. But of the 1,400 customers, we have to replace 600, we're pretty sure we have to replace 600 service lines on our dime at about 10,000 apiece. So boom, 6.2 million and 900,000, so you can see we're actually in a negative net position. But again, that 6.2 million, we've got another 16, 17 years to get all those in place.
Wasn't there a bunch of lawsuits filed on that? About the state mandating it but not funding it?
Non-funded mandate.
Oh, unfunded.
Unfunded, non-funded.
Yeah, there's been all sorts of lawsuits on it.
Any of that gotten anywhere? Or?
Nope, not at all. The state is still saying that you shall do this, and this all comes out of, for good or for bad, the Flint water crisis. Some might argue that it's overreaction, some might say that it's underreaction, that it should have been done a long time ago. One of the interesting things that hasn't been settled yet is we're supposed to replace 18 inches inside
Yes, correct.
the residence.
For the first valve.
But you don't have to let us in. I mean, we can't trespass into your, even though the state of Michigan has said we shall go inside your house, and replace the pipe, the service line, you can still refuse. So the big question came up was, now do we have to go out and get court-ordered warrants to enter your property to replace the line to give you better water quality?
Why would anybody deny it?
There are some obstinate people out there that don't want you in their house.
You're getting to a water line, why would you deny it? I mean,
Well, we haven't had any of that. I think everybody's been more like, hey, when are you gonna do mine? Which is great, but you're probably gonna run into that, and then what does the community do? Your hands are kinda tied, and it's a lot of work to go get a warrant, to go into somebody's house and replace their water line. And I don't even know if anybody's gotten to that point in the state yet.
The process is gonna take so long, why not just put those people at the end of the list? By the time you get to them, it might be a different property owner.
Well, and that's the thing too, you can skip them, you have to make progress, and we're supposed to be 100% done in 20 years. And I think that number came out of some of, like, Detroit, that's, they're still the biggest city, that has got hundreds of thousands of customers in Grand Rapids and Walker and Wyoming. Some of them just said it's physically impossible to get this done in any sooner than 20 years. So you're right, that could be one, well, we'll be back in a couple of years. In the marine,
How are we cost-wise for our water rate versus everyone else in the county?
we have been the second lowest overall, lowest water rate in the county. I think Fruitport, I don't know where they're at, but they used to be lower than us. And when I say overall, because a lot of communities, like some over there, they have a commodity charge, a readiness to serve charge, and a debt charge. So when you add all of those up, we're way cheaper than Montague, where we have one rate that covers all of that. But a lot of times when you ask them, they'll say, oh, our flow rate is, half of Whitehall's. But then when you add those up, but I think we're still second, if not the lowest, in the whole county.
That's for water, how do we stand for sewer?
Sewer, we're probably in the similar position. Our add-on, I think our sewer treatment cost is probably 60 or 70% of our total sewer cost. So we're still one of the lowest in the county as far as sewer cost. That with all of us sending it to the county and all of us paying the same treatment costs, it kind of brings us all closer together. But we're still relatively cheap compared to other communities. And I know actually, Muskegon Heights water probably went through the roof because Norton Shores and Muskegon Township pulled out of their system years ago. So, they went from 3 large communities down to 1, and, there are economies of scale, but you still got the same pipes in the ground that have to be covered. In our marina, 135 in revenues, 114 in expenses, so we show a net profit, and I know Alyssa's probably shaking her head over there, but I like to do the sunny side. So we show a net operating profit, but we're $46,000 in depreciation, so it's actually a net loss if you're looking at the books. Her second year, her third year, it'll be able to do it in her sleep, but what I present to you is a ton of work by the department heads. And I think I don't know if anybody really had budgets that came in that we just went, seriously? Like I said, we're trying to give Brian more money to spend, but now I know if I give Roger more money to spend, he'll figure out a way.
Do we have anywhere in the budget for improve the Christmas lighting?
We spend, in Tifa, we spend a few thousand every year for new Christmas lights. You buy the industrial outdoor, they don't last. I don't know where these lights typically go, if they normally put them up in Florida and consider that good weather, but we buy thousands of dollars worth every year for Koval Park, for the downtown, and it's just, a constant. We haven't really gone to expand where the lights are. I guess 3 spots, 4, Koval, and I'm probably gonna go with 5. I know we do them in Koval, we do them at the gazebo, we do them downtown at the Christmas tree.
World War II
Downtown
monument.
poles.
Yep.
It seems like there's another spot.
World War II monument
Yep.
behind the handrail.
City Hall?
City Hall. Keith's house.
No wonder I can't sleep. So, yes, Steve, we do,
Okay.
again, we're always replacing them. I think we learned early on, the first time we bought them, is that white is not the same as bright white, because the ones we bought kind of like had a blue tint to them, if you remember. People were like, why'd you buy blue lights? And we said, well, it says white on the box. So we found out that we went with bright white to get, you know, the real sharp white color.
I know every year I hear people complain about what we used to do as far as further down east on Colby and further south on Mears. But so if there's no plan to extend our lighting, then I certainly think we need to make that clear that we have no intention of extending it, but just to maintain what we have.
Yeah, we used to, I think way back when, and we probably still have some relics over at DPW, we would buy the stuff probably from Bonners and Frankenmuth. And that stuff just, I don't know, that stuff just never holds out to the weather. And of course, our downtown has got a lot of wind. That comes right down Colby Street. That's why we don't have the banners across City Hall anymore. Used to be entertaining on windy days.
Yeah, real entertaining.
Hey, Brian, hang on to that
Watch
end.
the poles go in.
There goes Brian again.
Yeah, amazing to see those poles keep pulling in.
That's too bad that guy went out of business with the lease, because that was an ideal thing. So
Yep, and that's a problem too. You just, you know, people are getting out of that business.
Montague is still buying them and storing them, my assumption is.
And they
That's what I understand.
They restring them every year,
Yeah.
just about, well, they haven't in a couple of years, but,
Yeah,
and you can tell.
yep. Yeah.
And I know-
And looking at those, they aren't cheap. I looked at them, the commercial stuff, and
Yep.
it's ridiculous.
And there is a big difference between Montague's DDA, because their downtown development authority has a very small district. I mean, they've got some money, especially with Ellenwood Marina down there, but, so they've got less money than us, but a much smaller district. Our district goes, you know, from downtown all the way to Warner Street and White Lake Drive, but we do have more revenue, right? And I'm not, you know, real, well-versed on what their DDA budget is, but we spend our DDA money on a lot of things.
I'd like to see it, that once those lights do get replaced, that they have that capability and we just continue that down. I'd like to see those lights run all the way to the bridge like Montague does down the road. Probably not my lifetime, but, you know, as we go around with those LEDs down at the park and in the parking lot and everything else, I'd like to see us at least put the white lights and garland on those too and work our way down and around with them. I think it would look nice, especially down by the gazebo and down Lake Street, because that's, you know, we got that big building gonna go in down there and everything else, so down by the park, probably wouldn't be a bad deal, just add a few more to it each year. One thing I would really like to see, and I think we're lacking, especially now that we put the social district in place, is a lack of seating in the North Mears area. I drove down there today purposely to look. I think there's a few spots to put some tables in down there for people to sit, and we could put a few tables right on that sidewalk, between the curb and, essentially it would be in line with the garbage can and the bench. We could move to the other side and put one there. At least 2 tables would be nice there with
Where are
the,
you at?
be on
You said the
the
sidewalk?
east side, it'd be the northeast side, right by Bell's.
Cells, okay, there we
Yeah,
go. All
so there's a bench there, there's a spot on the other side, we can move that bench, and then there's some actual bolt-in tables with 3 seats, and we could put 2 of those there to match black and that same thing. That would at least give people a spot to sit, and then there's a couple in the promenade actually down there, we could actually put a couple tables down there in the same style as downtown.
I heard a couple complaints last year that Fetch, I don't know what the liquor control rules were, but they were kicking other people out with social district cups from sitting in Fetch's area, because there was some, I don't know what it was.
Yeah.
I didn't know if that mattered, since that was technically city sidewalk or how that would, because if you look at it that way, there's no park, or nowhere to sit for anyone else that buys anything either.
Other than the few spots around the fire pit.
Yeah.
Well, that was kind of one of the nuances with the social district, because the city council had previously allowed that to be dedicated, if you will, to Fetch for their outdoor drinking, that we had to take the social district across the street and up along the sidewalk by Bell's. And technically, you cannot take social district drinks into other establishments, correct, Roger?
Correct.
So, yeah, technically, you can't buy a beer from Mylands. I don't know if they sell,
They're not in, yeah,
they're not in it anymore?
they never were, they
Oh.
never participated.
Okay,
Just Pub 101.
so you can't take a Pub 111 beer and go sit in that fenced-off area at Fetch. That puts both of their liquor licenses at jeopardy. I don't know how much jeopardy, but they can't do it.
Are all the businesses interested in doing it this year that were in it last year?
I'm pretty sure that the two that are currently participating are, I mean, I know
That's just Pub 111 and Fetch?
Mylands never showed any interest. I mean, they said at first that they would, and as I sent them information, they never followed through on anything.
Wow.
And I don't think it's cost prohibitive to do it. I mean, I don't even think the glasses.
No, I think Fetch did stickers, I think.
I know,
they
they're
did
cheap.
stickers themselves.
But that's just
I
an
know Jen
example.
said that her and her boys sat
think I
there
heard
with
by
the
from
stickers
downtown
on,
has-
but solo cups for their.
Just covering that.
Pub 111 done with their outdoor seating arrangement, or are they looking to put that back up at all?
I think last summer, they did not do it. There were some,
They did
Code
it,
requirements?
they Took it down.
yeah, there were some code requirements,
Safety issue.
code requirements that they chose not to comply with, so they took it down. Yeah, we haven't heard from them. I don't know if other code enforcement agencies, trying to say.
I haven't
I'm
heard
trying not to
anything.
totally point at Keith.
No, I haven't heard anything from them.
And I don't know how, I don't know. I went there a few times and it was kind of, you didn't know if you were actually gonna see a waitress or not. They didn't really embrace it when it was open, from my experiences. Because a lot of people would sit there thinking they would see a waitress and basically, well, kind of like Fetch. Well, Fetch does have waiters come out.
So we could.
That was one of the reasons they listed to me they were going to take it down was staffing.
Mhm.
They didn't have enough staff to manage both their
and be a-
dining room in that.
Yeah.
Like I said, they ain't looking cheap, but they're high quality. They're gonna freaking rent it.
What, as far as road improvements, I'm assuming that streets fund is what's limiting us in progress for the most part? I mean, the
For the most
water
part.
and sewer is keeping up, it's just, we don't have as much in the street side to do.
Right.
That's a big part of it, and another part is, I mean, there's only so much you can physically do in a year.
Right.
I think we'd probably have a few people grumble if we were doing Warner and Mears at the same time. I mean, the two major north-south.
Yes.
Just, getting the engineers, getting the contractors. Nope.
Wow.
Good morning.
Atmosphere.
Time to go home.
Now contractors still seem to be relatively available, as far as number of bids. So I don't think that's the issue, but supply chain is starting to come around. I don't know if we've still gotten our pipes yet from Mears Avenue.
Nope.
That we bought last October.
Correct.
It's
They told us 12 to 18 months out, and we were optimistic. We purchased them. I mean, we haven't sent the check over.
Do we need to do the similar thing for the Warner project
That's
as
what
well?
we're talking about, right?
We probably will. And I think I might have mentioned, what I heard was the city of Kentwood just went out and bought every piece of pipe they could. So we can go to Kentwood and see if we can buy it from them.
Well, I imagine it's cheaper if we buy it now than later as well.
Yep.
I'm sure it's just like the trucks.
I think prices are starting to level off a little bit, but for a while they were just ridiculous for any type of piping and construction material.
For the roads that, and put Brian in the spot, sorry. For the roads that don't need infrastructure improvements as far as storm,
Water,
and sewer, what kind of cost are we looking per linear foot or whatever for milling and repaving?
Oh, probably, one block is,
Is it long block or short block?
it was a short block.
Short
It's the one I ride.
That's a bus, buddy.
You're asking a hard question. It
Too many
depends on,
factors.
there's too many things, yeah, curb gutter.
Yeah.
Is it crush and reshape? That's what a majority of ours will be, is a crush and reshape. So that's kind of hard for me to give you a number. One that I would probably be lying to you, and I'm
Oh,
not
okay.
gonna do that.
We call that a swing.
Is that quarter million that we have for that going to get us very far?
It should, yep. For an example, in my mind, we're doing Wesco Division, those 2 blocks, the other end by the schools, Mears Avenue, portion of Mears on the north end, in front of Alice.
In front of the post office.
Horrible.
Yep. Well, if you keep your tires from spinning
Yeah, kill that pine tree that's next to me.
that. So sorry.
So going where Keith's going, I mean, the same thing everybody else is here. All I hear listening to is griping about the roads and the potholes and everything else. And the only thing to increase it and to make more income is to increase, there's only a few ways to do it, and
He was one.
I don't know. I
I
don't know.
was about to say, you got more than one, I only got one.
I mean, we could special assess for the sidewalks. I mean, you could create a special assessment. Do we have the ability to create a special assessment district? That was in like the last MML mag.
You can, but special assessment districts have to be strictly for the benefit of those in the district paying.
Okay.
Sometimes, I don't know, streets are kind of questionable,
Yeah, that's the
because
thing.
everybody drives on the street in front of their house.
Yep, yep. And the general millage increase and the city income tax are the only ones I could come up with that would even remotely. And
In almost all instances, when there is an income tax imposed,
I mean,
But there's a
I
reduction
remember there's a
in-
lot of administrative fees with that and everything else.
there are, you're talking a full-time person.
Yeah,
But a lot of times it's a reduction in the property tax. I mean, you still hope that you collect more money.
yeah.
I know that during COVID, for some odd reason, the city of Muskegon hit record numbers for income tax.
Which is shocking.
Well, a lot of people were working from home, so
Yeah.
they were still working. But yeah, that's what Leanne Mikesell had mentioned a couple of years ago, is that their numbers were through the roof.
And I know that millage has kind of fallen by the wayside too with what his original intentions were between, I mean, that was a, if I remember right, that was a police and fire pretty much millage, or income tax is what it was gonna go for, wasn't it? If I remember right, back when eons ago when it was passed, wasn't that what they were trying to get with that?
I'm not as old as you, so I wouldn't.
Is it full or empty?
Let's get there.
I think that's what that original intention was
Well-
more for city fire, and I think, like I said,
That
that,
wouldn't have been for the streets though.
it wasn't. It was for public safety,
I don't know.
and
For
that's
the
how they
income
sold it.
tax.
Huh?
For the income tax?
Yeah.
Well, and they had Sappy, which was going,
Yeah,
and the cop
which was
lines. Those were
huge.
the
I mean,
two
and they
big
lost their
ones.
industry, and that's what essentially dumped that income tax, which was kind of like what the politicians did to us with the personal property tax for Helmet and everybody else we were collecting on, so.
Well, you're currently at 15.7 mils. Charter allows us to go up to 20. And every mill brings in about 100, I'm gonna round up, 120 grand, Melissa?
Which isn't
So not
much.
a whole lot.
Which isn't much.
No. And how far, I know a lot of people are grousing about the streets, and we're not denying that they're not bad. I had one gentleman that said 90% of the roads are horrible. I thought, that might be a stretch.
One caused a vehicle fire the other day, Scott.
Pardon?
One caused a vehicle fire the other day, according to Facebook, so.
Oh, really?
The pothole on Mears was so bad it caused the
In
vehicle to
front of
catch
the,
fire,
in
so.
front of the post
Wow.
In
office.
front of the post office.
I haven't heard anybody that's in favor of any kind of tax increase.
Absolutely.
Well, no one ever is.
They're also
Schools
not
just
in
got shut
favor of
down.
any kind of borrowing.
Yeah, exactly.
So they pretty much want things the way they are tax-wise, but a lot
They want
better
to
roads.
What's across the railroad cap for a millage rate, remember?
Montague?
Yeah.
They had dropped theirs for a few years, and then they kind of went oops, and I think they're higher than us right now.
Okay, I was just,
Pardon?
18?
I think at one point they were at 14, when we were at, what, 15.7? But I think they've been bumping theirs up a bit.
okay. So we're still.
Yeah, and I think, like I said, we're not denying that we have bad streets. I was gonna say that we don't have bad streets. But as you saw, we're pumping millions in.
Yeah,
As much as we
I
can,
don't
when we
disagree.
can.
And maybe it's just an education thing. I don't know.
Well,
Like I said,
we keep-
or it's easy for people to hit the keystrokes on the keyboard and gripe about everything and not really
Well, I
understand.
had one high school student said she was gonna start a GoFundMe for Warner Street, and I said, you need 1.8 million, and whatever you collect above that, you keep yourself. So, I don't know where her motivation is, but they're expensive, and with Warner Street, $400,000, that's, was that 25% of the project?
It's
Maybe
underneath
not
it.
that high, 20% of the project. It's hard not to be a little patient when you've got that kind of money coming in.
Yep.
Mhm.
Now, I guess it's easier for staff, harder for council, and really hard on the residents that drive Warner Street, because they just want it fixed now.
Yep.
They just want the money now.
It's the way of the world. Everybody wants to snap their fingers and have everything better and done. I mean,
J.D. Wentworth.
it just can't, yeah.
Want no
Maybe
money,
we need
want
to,
it now.
yeah, exactly. Maybe we need to hire him. No. Yeah, that's, like I said, that's what makes it difficult, so.
I'll put Brian on the spot again. Are we,
Crying out loud.
You
Sorry,
chose-
sorry, sorry, you sat here now.
are we making headway, or are we just keeping our head above water as far as replacing infrastructure and what's to come?
As far as infrastructure, I think we're making headway.
Okay.
So far as the water's concerned, the water main, we've done a lot of improvements.
Okay.
I think it's driven by the fire department for the most part, but,
No more wood, Keith. We'll get-
no, seriously, we're making headway. Sanitary, I really can't speak that same way. We got into lining that program, it's expensive. About $50,000 a block, so we've got to pull back on that, but we just keep maintaining.
Are there any, after we get past Warner, where are we looking next?
For local streets would be Livingston,
Okay.
from Colby basically all the way to Shoreline, skipping a few blocks in there that are already done, completed. Muskegon Avenue.
Muskegon needs it bad too.
Mhm.
Why do we not do chip and seal like the county, and apparently Montague also does the same thing, and they swear by it, so. And it fills the cracks and keeps it from water seeping in and freezing and seeping in and freezing. And according to Jeff Auk, I went to talk to the other day, he says that extends the life of the road by up to 10 years.
5 years industry standard. If you let it go for too long, like a perfect example of doing that right now, Steve, would be Mears Avenue from Slocum to where we are going to pick up for the new construction, so Gibb Street, let's say. Those are the type of streets that you would want to do that to
Chip and
prolong, pardon me?
You would want to do chip and seal?
Correct, to prolong that, to give it another 5 years.
Uh-huh.
But that's, some, like Benston Road, that's too far gone. Unfortunately, we can't do anything with that one now.
Well, what about out the end of Lewis where it turns into Peach out there? We already got big cracks in the middle of that.
Yep.
Why could that not be a chip and seal? That's a pretty heavily used road anymore.
It is a heavily used road, but it's getting to the point now where you're just throwing, dare I say, $25,000 on something that,
Band-aid work.
And they have a specific plan of over there that they do these roads this year and these roads the next year.
Right.
Down the line.
and so do we. We have that same, not their particular plan is in rehabilitation, but we do have a plan also.
So we do chip and seal at times?
No, we haven't done chip and seal since people were screaming at us. And it's been quite a few years since we have done it.
Uh-huh.
20 years probably.
But it does seal the cracks, I would assume. 'cause
It does.
There's a tire on it, and
It does.
it keeps the water from getting in there, I would
Yep.
think. That was one of the things I was gonna bring up tomorrow night,
But we also
but now
changed,
it's out there.
Steve, we also, Brian and I were just talking, we changed our mix, what was it? Since Division Street?
Yes.
They used to use, if I speak out of place, let me know.
No,
They used
go
to use
for
a
it.
Michigan mix,
I can
Steve.
hear you, I can see the back of
They,
your head.
there you are. Hey, they used to use my understanding is they used to use a Michigan mix. Some engineer came up with it, and it used to be bigger stones.
Uh-huh.
So, and what that's supposed to do is the water's supposed to go through the roadbed and dissipate. Well, we all know how, like Scott was saying, we all know what happens when roads freezes and they turn back to water and freeze and it breaks it up. So Division Street, we council, last time I was on, you were on, we went to a stickier
22A.
mix, which is a smaller stone.
Mhm.
My driveway is the same way. When they did Alice Street, they did with, Dick knows, they cut my driveway and they put the new mix in. The other part of my driveway is the old style, which is what we're using now. I can go down my driveway with a shovel, and as soon as I hit that new mix, it stops because everything goes in there and freezes. And you can, it was really amazing when we started talking about that stuff and I got educated on it, what actually happened. So we went back to the sticky, as they call it, and Brian's got a name for it, a sticky mix, which takes 22A.
Yep.
We went to our 22A, which is, you can't drive on it as fast, but it seems to last longer because Division Street was the first road we did on it. From what was it? Atlas towards Wesco. And it
Well,
seems,
we did Alice too.
yeah, and it seems to be holding up better.
When we did, Lake Street down past the tannery and stuff,
That's the
that
same
was
stuff,
supposed
isn't
to be
it?
some kind of a special green street type of a.
Parts of it are correct, yep.
And that seems to be holding up fairly well, or has it just not been long enough?
That's
It just hasn't been long enough, Steve. We're getting there though.
Oh, okay.
And that's the same mix, isn't it?
Yeah, yes.
That's the same, that's the
But-
new mix.
On the
Oh.
sides, we have, is the Green Street.
Yeah,
Or sticky.
okay.
And the other problem we got are all the big trees everybody loves. Because if you look where on the roads, where the trees are, where the roads are bad and all the holes are, you find a big tree. So
So
it
you got a lot
doesn't,
of
stuff,
trees at Montague.
stuff of it doesn't dry out. So,
Yeah,
yep.
Well, and there, with the asset management plan, the strategy is let the bad roads just
I've got to educate you.
go by the wayside. Because
Turn
why
gravel.
keep, pardon?
let the bad roads turn to gravel.
Pretty much.
Basically,
A
just-
lot of them did,
just
yeah. a
throwing
lot of-
good money at bad roads.
Right.
And, try and maintain the good roads and the average roads and just let the bad roads go to SOL. Where, that's kind of the theory with the asset management plan, where, from what you're saying, Montague might be doing the opposite. They're gonna do everything they can to save the bad roads and extend the life, but sooner or later, you're gonna be replacing a ton of roads. And that's just the cycle we're in right now. You get 20 years lifespan on asphalt and 40 on concrete. You go to the east side of the state and it's all concrete, because they swear by it, but it's twice the cost.
Yeah,
So,
they had to do that on the hill at Montague because asphalt wouldn't hold up on the hill.
yeah,
It is a lot more money, I know that.
yeah.
They did that section of Layton in concrete a few years ago. And that's nice. But big bucks.
I'm gonna make my yearly comment of, my biggest problem with this whole thing once a year is the playhouse and the city being in the business of running a business that is losing money. And it's, other than the roads, it's the biggest complaint that I hear from anybody that lives in this city, is why does the city pay to run the playhouse?
Well, in the same vein, it's an enterprise fund, just like the marina, like the motor pool, like the water and the sewer funds. They're all enterprise funds. And be curious to know how many of those complainers actually partake in what the Playhouse has to offer. We've had mayors and managers dinners up there. I hosted the West Michigan managers up there, and they all love it. The reality is, 15 years ago, the city council said we're gonna save the Playhouse. So we've made a commitment to that, and I think you know, we owe it to the Playhouse and to those forefathers and forewomen to do the best we can. And for the most part, you know, the Playhouse is self-sustaining. I say for the most part, because we all know there's been some bailing out by the general fund, same as the marina. All of the marina grant improvements are funded for the local match by Tifa. So, you know, we're all kind of in it together, and if we can help each other out, talking about the different funds, then that's where we're at. Now, I can't argue, you know, whether or not the city should be in a business. There's probably, I don't know, Manistee goes back and forth between
Yeah.
city managed and private managed, but it's a rarity for
I
the
think
community.
Holland, I think Holland has one.
Do they? Huh?
I don't know.
No, you don't know.
I don't know if Holland owns the theater.
Okay.
I didn't think they did, but they might.
At least we don't have a stadium for the Detroit Tigers, because that's billions of dollars, and they're not very good. They're better entertainment at the Playhouse than, well, they've been winning, so maybe they're coming
I'll take
around.
it.
But, point taken.
Didn't Muskegon have
Just
one
pass it on.
for a while?
Yeah,
On
yeah.
Sanford?
What people
Muskegon owned one on
complain
Sanford
about.
for a while?
Yep.
Right by the high school? Or
Oh,
the
no,
Big
actually,
Red
that's
Stadium?
Muskegon Civic Theater owns that.
Oh, okay.
And it was owned by Port City Theater before
Okay.
that.
All right.
And Opera, you know, Muskegon
Yeah.
Opera, yeah, they all own that.
Okay, I wasn't sure on that one.
Yeah, it's pretty rare to have a city-owned theater, but I mean, you know, it's a good thing, I guess.
an
If we
amenity.
want to promote that destination, Whitehall,
Exactly.
it's one of the things, so.
I think it'd be more fiscally irresponsible at this point to abandon our efforts with the Playhouse. We're, at this point, pot committed, like it or not. I agree with it. I think it's a great way to bring people into the area. I personally haven't heard anyone complain about it. But, you know, that's before COVID and well, after COVID now, you see that street lined up with a ton of people are here spending their money. So
Yep.
it's a positive for the community.
I remember as a kid going watching movies there.
COVID came at a bad time for everybody.
Yep.
But after a $3 million expansion and renovation, to say,
They
no, we're not gonna open up the doors for another 18 months. That was a real,
That was neat,
yeah, a body blow for the Playhouse.
yeah.
Well, I think it's a great asset to the community. I'm glad we have it. I certainly want to support it and see its continued growth and profits, so. That said, I think this is a good budget. I'm grateful for all the work that all the department heads put into it. I think at this point, it's our job to decide whether we're gonna approve it or not, and once we do approve it, then let the city get on with it and conduct the business. As a council, our job is not to micromanage the city. We have great department heads in place, and they do a good job, and it's our job to let them do it, not oversee them, other than general, not micromanage. So, thank you for all the work that everyone's put into this.
Welcome.
That's embarrassing.
I know there.
Yeah.
And Alyssa, thank you for dinner.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
That's very kind.
Ours is, yeah. Do we have any?
She did your own little slice.
I did.
Yes, sir.
Anything further that anyone wants to say about this song? Okay, I guess not, then do we have any public comment?
Well, you touched upon one of my favorite subjects, Christmas lights. Now, some of you know that I put up probably 8,000 to 10,000 a year, and I can tell you from experience, go to Walmart and buy your lights, because there's no difference, and there's a reason for it. These are rectified circuits to keep the LEDs from flickering. An LED is not a light, it's actually a semiconductor, and the rectifiers that they put in the circuits are semiconductors. And semiconductors have a habit of failing with temperature, a whole host of reasons. What I do when a section of lights fail is I just take the section that's still working and tie it together and leave that loop and hang it in the tree. I get 3 to 5 years out of the lights. It takes some maintenance to do it, but you can get quite a bit of time out of the lights. You're not gaining anything by going to whomever, Bronner's, or tells you that they've got commercial. I get these notices online. These guys want these ridiculous sums of money for these lights, and there's no advantage. There really isn't. The other thing is, when you talked about color of the light, you know, you'll have, they call soft white, which is almost a yellow, and then you've got cool white, which is getting into the blue, and all those are measured by temperature. And the middle of the range is about 5,500 K, which is close to sunlight. So when you're purchasing your lights, look at that. You know, think of what sunlight is. It's pretty bright. Go the other direction, you're going to get into those softer lights. You go above 55 K, it's going to get brighter and brighter. I've been decorating 35-foot, well, they're about 35 feet tall now, fir trees from the ground. So I can show you guys a lot of tricks if you want to do trees, tall trees. This year I'm probably going to have to rent a man lift. Anyhow, that's my biggest, the biggest thing I wanted to say is I really would like to be included in the Christmas lights thing if you want me, and if there's any way you can include me. The other thing is, when you're doing the infrastructure, that's going to be a sore subject, because we're whining about it all the time, and we're going to continue to whine about it. God, will you just make, you know, Herculean efforts to not mess up with any more trees? Please. And I know they're in the way, and Brian's thinking, Jerry, would you shut up? But the trees are just, I mean, they really, really make a difference in a town. And Mears Avenue is still, you know, got that small town feel with the trees laced over the top of the street and that whole thing. And we lost that, you know, on Colby Street. And it's a big loss. It's a big loss. So, I guess that's all. There's a whole bunch of other stuff I made notes on, but we'll talk about that later. But this is the best budget I've seen yet. We've been coming here for 9 years. Seriously.
Thank you.
All right.
This is really, is this you and Alyssa or all?
It's a team effort.
Yeah.
Yep. When the department heads give us realistic budgets, and they have for quite a few years, then it makes our job a lot easier. There was years where we were doing a lot of slicing.
Yeah.
But I think, again, the department heads have done great, and Alyssa, you know, it's her second year of doing it her way.
Yeah.
She's doing great with that, and
Yeah.
with a lot of support from Brooke.
Yeah, it looks great. One other quick thing, on the pot money. It's great, you know, we could put some towards the parks. But I gotta tell you where I'm at, especially after speaking with a couple of counselors whom actually voted for the legalization of pot. And they're telling us that they have huge problems now because of it. Now, it's not gonna be a problem for everybody, but it is gonna be for some people. And I think if you're getting, what did you say, $56,000 or something? Or,
Yeah,
yeah. In my mind, where I'd like to see that go is half to the police department and half to community mental health. I mean, I think that should be a big consideration. And it could be used for, you know, alcohol problems too, but I'd like, you know, in my wildest dreams, you guys are gonna laugh at this, I win $750 million and I take $19 million and I repave this entire town, all 19 miles, with an agreement that you guys are gonna do it a mile a year afterwards.
well, Jerry, it's 26 miles, and it'd probably be about 52 million.
Whatever.
You better hit the big ones.
Whatever we get to $750 million, you know, it's gonna be a tax
doesn't
write-off,
matter.
so, yeah, it doesn't matter.
We will appreciate any help.
Yeah. I'll set up a GoFundMe. Thank you.
Yep. Anything else? Yes,
I was gonna mention, I have a link to Inflation Reduction Act funding spreadsheet. So if grant writing is something that really interests any of you, and you wanna have a link to that spreadsheet, and it may fit for some of the projects that you really wanna see happen in the budget, see me afterward and I'll send you a link to it.
Yeah, you've sent that to Jeff and I, right? And it's lengthy.
It is
So
big.
I've been going through it, it's a lot of, mostly federal grants. So yeah, we've got that link and we've been looking through it. But if there's anything that you come across that you know, think it would be a home run for us, then just, send me an email and I'll look at that a little tighter.
Yeah, and because the spreadsheet is so large, really the way to do it is if there's a project that you really want to see done and it fits in with infrastructure or one of the things that's in there, planting trees, there's all kinds of stuff in there, parks and things. So if that's your thing that you want to see happen, you have to go to the tab and find it, so.
thank you.
Start with your project, then go to the spreadsheet.
Thank you. Nothing else? All right, we're adjourned.